Deshaun Watson suffering another ruptured Achilles, this during his recovery from his October Achilles surgery. This is all per our Jonathan Jones, who also says he had surgery recently to repair that second torn Achilles. His availability for the 2025 season is now in doubt, with his clock restarting on his recovery. Let's welcome in Ryan Wilson here. First off, you hear that news and your reaction is what?
I was shocked because he tore it once, and I was confused as to why it was news again. But it turns out he has torn it again, and that creates all sorts of issues, right, Emily? Because number one, Deshaun Watson has not played well as a member of the Cleveland Browns from the moment he signed with the team, and his career's been injury riddled in Cleveland, and we know about the issues beforehand in Houston, and it just feels like maybe the football gods are trying to tell us something in terms of what the Browns need to do in terms of moving on. They did restructure Deshaun's deal recently to spread out the cap hit in one of the, if not the worst contracts in recent NFL history for sure. And now the issue becomes, what's plan B or C or D going to be? Because a year ago, Joe Flacco literally got off a couch, played the final month and a half, 2 months with the Browns, and helped get that team to the playoffs. This year, when Deshaun Watson went down, Jameis Winston came in and provided a momentary spark and started making some turnovers and throwing interceptions, and he was replaced by Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who didn't play truly inspired football. And I think with the Bailey Zappi playing a little bit in Week 18, the bottom line is this. You have the number 2 overall pick. Myles Garrett, the best player on that team and one of the best players in the NFL, wants to know the direction of the franchise, and you're probably going to have to take a quarterback. And I think maybe this latest injury with Deshaun Watson, if it hadn't already, makes that even clearer as we look towards the draft here in about 100 days, Emily.
Yeah, Ryan, usually when we're talking to you this time of year, it's to talk about the NFL draft, and this will have implications on what the Browns plan to do, as you said, with that number 2 overall pick. You currently have Shedeur Sanders from Colorado mocked to them. What do you think about that potential fit?
I love it. I don't know if the Sanders family is going to be wild about the idea of going to an organization that has been dysfunctional for virtually since returning to Cleveland in 1999. So that's going to be one of the big talking points going forward. I don't know if the Browns will come out at any point in the next few months and say, hey, we have to take a quarterback. We're going to have to move on from Deshaun Watson and the consistent injuries. But the other talking point is going to be, what does Coach Prime and Shedeur Sanders want to do? Because Coach Prime has made it clear that he's going to have some say on where his son ends up. He said, I'm not going to put people on blast publicly, but I will have conversations privately. And same thing that Eli Manning did back in 2004 in the Manning family, that said we're not going to the San Diego Chargers. Chargers drafted him anyway. He ended up in New York with the Giants and won 2 Super Bowls. So we'll see how this plays out. And I wouldn't begrudge anyone for having concerns about going to an organization like Cleveland that can't seem to get out of its own way. So that I understand. Now, maybe this problem's solved if Shedeur Sanders goes first overall, Emily, and then the Cleveland Browns can take Cam Ward, for example. But we'll have to cross that bridge when we get to it. So this creates a lot of intrigue in terms of what happens at the top of the draft. And unlike last year, there are only really 2 quarterbacks that are probably going to be first-round picks. Last year we had 6 in the top 12. So just something to look forward to as we get to April 24th here, looking ahead to the spring.
Yeah, quite a few quarterback-needy teams. Not a whole lot of quarterbacks, though, available. So, Ryan, if it's not Shedeur Sanders at number 2 to the Browns, who else could potentially be the future at the quarterback position?
Oh, sweet Lord, I don't know.
That's an acceptable
That is a
answer.
huge issue. So, look, if you're not going to take a quarterback at 2 because you can't, or maybe you're just not crazy about the quarterback class, Travis Hunter's a layup. You take Travis Hunter, and it gets fans excited. You still have to figure out the quarterback situation, and maybe there's a bridge quarterback you're thinking about. Justin Fields is going to be a free agent. Do you want to go down the Kirk Cousins trail? Should that not no longer be a situation where he's going to be playing in Atlanta, and it doesn't look like he's going to be? There's not a lot to choose from in terms of free agents to be. I don't know if there are going to be trade candidates out there of teams that want to move on from veteran quarterbacks. Daniel Jones could be a possibility. I don't know how much that excites you. So there'll be some options, not great options. They'll be sort of in the range of the Jameis Winstons and Joe Flacco's we saw the last 2 years. You could also trade down and allow a team to move up to get one of these quarterbacks that perhaps would want to go to that organization. But it allows you to stockpile picks if you're the Browns. And they have several needs. They don't have as many needs as some of these other teams picking at the top of the draft, like the Titans, for example, or even the Patriots who picked number 4. But they can certainly use some warm bodies. And that was sort of what Myles Garrett was getting at when he said, I want to know the direction of this franchise before I continue to subject myself to 18 weeks of this year in and year out. I would think the Browns would want a quarterback. They have to convince whoever that quarterback might be that the Cleveland situation is not as dire as it seems, and they are on the right track. Kevin Stefanski is a great offensive coach. It's crazy to think that he was so good that he won Coach of the Year last year and helped get that team to the playoffs because there's been so much dysfunction over the last 4 or 5 months. So there's a lot to do, not a lot of time to do it in, Emily, and the Browns got to get this thing right because we know what not having a quarterback looks like, and it's been hard to watch, even with Deshaun Watson fully healthy.
Yeah, it's going to take some convincing. I think back to that jersey that somebody put together with the just dozens of quarterback names on the back. It's been a long list of Browns quarterbacks. We'll see who the next one is. Ryan Wilson, thank you so much for joining us. You can check him out on With the First Pick podcast. If you have not been paying attention to his draft coverage, it is officially heating up with the college football season coming to a close. You can listen wherever you get your podcasts and watch now by scanning the QR code. Breaking news from the NFL, our Jonathan Jones reports that Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson has suffered a ruptured Achilles tendon again. Watson recently had surgery to repair the Achilles. That setback now puts his availability for the 2025 season in jeopardy. This is Jonathan Jones' report. This was, of course, during his recovery from an October Achilles surgery. Once again, ruptured it again. He had surgery to repair that one. And we are not sure what is next for Deshaun Watson and the Browns. We know what's next here, though. We bring on Jonathan Jones to discuss more of this news. Just first off, what are you hearing about Watson?
Yeah, it's a very, very unfortunate setback here for Deshaun Watson. We heard from Andrew Berry a few days ago who said that Deshaun Watson had suffered a setback in his recovery from that October Achilles surgery, but he didn't really offer any other details. And now, of course, we learned that it was another rupture, which it does happen sometimes. I know we don't really hear about it all that often, but the Achilles is such a tendon that can be vulnerable to such a thing. It is unclear how this took place, stepping off the bed during, some sort of rehab. I don't know, but ultimately, and certainly the most important thing here is that this resets the clock for Deshaun Watson. That if you're talking about what an average recovery time is for one Achilles surgery, it's somewhere in that 7 to 8 month range. We've seen guys come back from it as quickly as 4.5 or 5 months, but those are very, very rare cases. A lot of times what you see is guys not really getting back to 100% full health for another year, right? About 12 months or so. So it can go anywhere in between there, but the sort of safe estimation is 7 or 8 months. Well, here we are right now in January, and you add that on to this year, you don't know if Deshaun is going to be able to play at all in 2025. This now certainly confirms that he will not be available for week 1 for much, if any, of training camp. And so, again, a very unfortunate setback for Deshaun Watson and a very consequential year for him and the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, we've seen quarterbacks struggle to come back from one Achilles injury. I can't imagine how challenging it is for 2. That's the medical side of things. Contractually, though, he, of course, reworked that historic contract he signed back in 2022 earlier this year. So does it have any sort of injury clause for all of that guaranteed money? How does that affect this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, the Browns, when they signed Deshaun Watson, took out a very hefty insurance policy. I don't want to bore the viewers, but I want to sort of explain that the insurance policy will allow the Browns, if he does not play a down of football in 2025, if he cannot recover to play for the Cleveland Browns in the regular season in 2025 or the postseason, the Browns would be able to recoup about $44 million or so in salary cap space in 2026. Deshaun Watson's still going to be paid his contract. He is still due about $92 million in guaranteed money. That money will be paid on time. That is not changing for when his direct deposits hit. But for the Browns, if he's unable to play in 2025 because of the insurance policy they took out on Deshaun Watson a while ago, they would be able to get some salary cap relief in 2026. Now, we're still far away from 26. We're here in 2025 and preparing for the season. That contract restructure that you mentioned just a bit ago, what that is able and what that is sort of helping the Browns do is spread out his cap hits over the next couple of years. And so that will allow the Browns to stay competitive in 2025 by re-signing some of their own players, potentially signing some free agents, making Myles Garrett and Joel Bitonio, two veterans who had voiced concerns about the direction of the franchise. Well, hey guys, don't worry. We have some cap space. We're going to be able to be competitive in 2025. It also allows for the Browns to get out of Deshaun Watson's contract a little bit easier after the 2025 season. Again, that's what it was when he restructured. But now that he has suffered another Achilles rupture, now you would be concerned come March 2026 about, can he pass a physical, what the injury guarantees would be, the sort of cap ramifications regarding that. So in summation, Emily, basically the Browns can get some salary cap relief in 2026 if he does not play in 2025. But they are very thankful, obviously, that they restructured his deal to give them some cap flexibility in 2025. And hopefully, of course, he'll be able to play this upcoming season.
I know you said he didn't want to bore the viewers with all the numbers and the contracts. I found that very interesting. But Browns fans are going, who is playing quarterback for us in 2025 if Deshaun Watson cannot go? So where does Cleveland turn?
So they have Dorian Thompson-Robinson under contract, drafted him a couple of years ago. They wanted to see a little bit more out of him this season. Of course, they had Jameis Winston. He's set to be a free agent come March. And so here are going to be a couple of free agent names that you're going to hear. Could the Browns bring back Joe Flacco? Played really well for the Browns down the stretch, of course, in 2023. Didn't really play all that well when he was a starter for the Indianapolis Colts this past year. You're going to hear Kirk Cousins, who used to play with Kevin Stefanski in Minnesota before Stefanski became the head coach, two-time coach of the year with the Cleveland Browns. Of course, Cousins is coming off his own Achilles from a year ago. Didn't really play that well this past season for the Atlanta Falcons. But if the Falcons are to cut Cousins, as many around the league expect, though not as the Falcons are posturing right now, the Browns could get him on the veteran minimum contract of $1.2-ish million next year. You're also very obviously going to be looking at the NFL draft. The Cleveland Browns have the number 2 overall selection in April's draft. They are behind the Tennessee Titans at 1, but just ahead of the New York Giants at 3. We believe that there are 2 quarterbacks worth taking in the first round or anywhere near the top of the first round, in Cam Ward from Miami and Shedeur Sanders from Colorado. And so we'll see how this draft season plays itself out. If the Browns are going to be comfortable taking one of those 2, if they only have one available to them after Tennessee selects at number 1 and they need a quarterback as well. And so that's really where the Browns stand right now. You can't believe that Deshaun is going to be able to play at all week 1 early in the season, maybe not at all in the season. You only have really one quarterback under contract in Dorian Thompson-Robinson. You have some old quarterbacks out there, relatively old, who have some familiarity with you in the system, and Flacco and Cousins, and you have the number 2 overall pick.
It's going to be incredibly interesting, and it just got a little bit more interesting. Jonathan Jones, thank you so much for joining us. Let's remind the people of the draft order. He said it. The Browns are drafting number 2 overall, expected to take a quarterback, but there's a team ahead of them with a brand new general manager who's selecting a number 1 overall that probably needs a quarterback as well. Not too many of those guys to go around.